Before we start creating our own posts, let us create a file to add some initial data to the database. This file is going to help us replace the hard-coded data on the timeline and start using real data from the database. For that, I'll just go in here to Solution Explorer, and since this is a data-related file, I'm going to add it in the circle app.data. But I'm going to put it in a separate folder. Let's name this helpers. And then right click, go to add, and then a class. Let us name this class the AppDbInitializer, and then add. If you want to be able to execute a method inside this class by just using the class name, then you need to define this class as static. Otherwise, you'll have to first create a reference of the class, and only then you can call the method. For that, I'll just change this to public static class and then DbInitializer. I'm going to create a method. The method is going to also be public and then static void. I'm going to name this method seed, and this will take as a parameter the AppDb context. Let us name this parameter just the AppDb context. Now the first thing we need to do in here is that we need to check if there are any users in the database, because we want this method to run only once. So if we have already created a user or we have users in the database, we don't want to re-execute this method. Other than the users, we are going to also check for the posts. So for that, in here, I'll just type if we don't have any AppDb context.users, so users.any, and we also don't have any posts, so AppDb context.posts. Only then we want to add users to the database. For that, I'll just type var new user, or maybe first user is just a name, is equal to new user, and the user is inclined app.data.models. This user is going to have a full name, let's say Ervis Trupia, and it's going to also have a profile picture URL. I already have a profile picture, so I'm just going to copy that value and paste it in here. And then I'm just going to use the AppDb context.users.add to first add the user to the application DB context, and then to save these changes to the database, you just use the AppDb context.saveChanges method. Now that we have the user, let us create two posts. One post is going to have an image, the other one will not. So var new post without image is equal to, this is going to be new post, and then the properties of a post are going to be basically just got definition, is going to have content, image URL, number of reports, date created, and date updated. I'll just come here, define the content. This is going to be our first post, which is being loaded from the database, and it has been created using our test user. The image URL is going to be just an empty string. The number of reports is going to be, let's say, just 0. And then the date created is going to be the datetime.utc_now. And as the name already indicates, this is going to get the datetime in UTC. And date updated, it can either be null or it can be datetime.utc_now. Now, if you want to associate this post to a user, and you have to because the user ID is not a nullable field, down here, we are going to define that the user ID is going to be the ID of new user. So new user dot ID. And here, let us add one more post, and this is going to be var new post with image is equal to new post. The content is going to be similar to this one. Let me just copy this one. Paste it down here. And the text, this is going to be our first post, which is being loaded from the database, and it has been created using our test user. At the end of the content, I'm just going to add this post has an image. The rest of the properties are going to be the same, but we just need to find an image. Now there are two ways in here. You can either download an image, create a folder inside here and put the image, or you can find any image that you want and you can just use that image. I've already gotten an image from the internet, so I'm just going to paste it in here, just the image URL. Now let us first add this post to the application DB context, so AppDbInitializer.post, and you can either add them one by one, or you can use the method addRange, and then in here add the new post without an image and the new post with an image, and then below just AppDbInitializer.saveChanges. Now this method in here is not asynchronous, but if you want to change this method to an asynchronous method, all you need to do is just change the void in here to be task, also change the name in here to be seed async, then down here add async, save changes async, and of course we need to add the await in front of here, so public static async task, and then add await in here, because when you create asynchronous methods you need to have async in the method declaration, then task return type, but since in this case we don't have return type because it's a void method, you just leave it as task. And then whenever you have the asynchronous operations like the add async or save changes async, you need to use await. Let's go down here. Let's also change this to add range async, await, also await, and then save changes async. Let us save the changes in this file. Now we need to call this file from the program.cs. So let us just go to Solution Explorer, then go to program.cs, and the file that we just created does expect as a parameter the AppDb context. So we just need to first be able to get this service. For that, in here just after this line, we are going to seed the database with initial data. The first thing to do in here is to create a reference to the AppDb context, which is the file that currently has access to the database or is just used to communicate with the database. For that, using then var scope. The reason I use the using is because after I have completed the operations, I just want to be able to close the reference to the database. So app.services.createScope. And then inside here, we need to first create a reference to the service. For that, var db context is equal to, and then scope.serviceProvider.get required service. And then the service we want to get is going to be the AppDb context. So if you want to use the AppDb context in here, you need to make sure that you have already configured it as part of the container. And then down here is an optional step. You can first make sure that you can use the db context, then database.migrate async, and this command just make sure that any pending migrations are being executed. And then next, just down here, await AppDbInitializer, seed async, and then the db context. Let us import the AppDbInitializer, and that is in the circle app.data.helpers. I'm just going to put a breakpoint in here, then I'm going to run the app. So we did reach the breakpoint. We just go next, and then next, and then go inside this method. Then here we are going to check if we have any users or posts, and we don't have any of them. Just go inside here, This creates a new user, adds it to the context, and then adds it to the database. So now at this point, we have a user ID. We check. The user ID is 1. Then go next, 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 and the execution was successful. Now let us go to the database and verify that we have the data in the database. In here, go to Server Explorer, and then just refresh if it's closed. Then here go to Tables, right-click on Posts, and then Show Table Data. And on here we can see that we have 2 posts. They are both created by the user ID 1. One of them does have an image URL, and the other one does not. On the next part, you'll learn how to load data from the database using the AppDb context.